Hello, Allie, my 6-year virtual friends before it was cool and necessary.
Exactly. We were practicing long before.
Yeah, we're the pioneers of virtual long distance relationships, lockdown relationships. So here we are again, 12 months later, sharing our private conversation, maybe publicly. We're going to see how we feel at the end of this conversation. But for anyone who is listening and is new to Allie and my relationship from the last 6 years, we met through an awesome mutual friend, Scott Shigioka. Shout out to Scott if you're listening.
Love you.
And we just found common ground at a time in our lives when we were going through mainly, I guess, like professional shifts and finding a new career path. And since then have found a kind of friend-mentor relationship that's been invaluable. And now that we've been in this relationship for several years, we have the kind of joy of being able to look back on how our lives have changed and evolved and seeing each other grow. And this year, more than any year, I think that this conversation will be able to highlight that.
Totally. Yeah, so much changed. I mean, on both ends differently this year. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
So just as a way of introduction, I'm based in Coolangatta, which is on the border of Queensland and New South Wales on the east coast of Australia. And your location is different this year than it was last year, I think, Ali.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it
So
is
we're
now in the southwestern desert, high desert of the United States in Santa Fe, New Mexico.
Oh my goodness, looks like a beautiful part of the world to be in, and I think we've both been very lucky this year. Probably me more than you in where we've chosen to live, but New Mexico seems like a pretty good place to be locked down in as
Yes,
well.
of all places in the US, this has been an incredible one to be in for sure.
Yeah, I wonder if I'd be interested to see if the politics and situation in your country comes up in our conversation and what impact that's had on you as well. We've definitely chatted about that this year and
Yeah.
the pandemic and yeah, all the obvious things as well. But maybe what we thought we'd start this conversation with was looking back on this conversation 12 months ago, and we both set an intention for the year ahead. And it's quite funny maybe to look back on that now. So Ali, do you want to start with what your intention was for 2020 and how did that work out for you?
How's that going? Um, yeah, I love this. I love too that we have this thread to kind of check back in on. My word was blossom for 2020. And, at first, when I think about that word, and how it's going, I feel my first thought is like, it's not what my vision board was by any means, and certainly not what I kind of expected for myself. This year, I moved from the East Coast, Washington, D.C., Maryland, where I've lived for, I mean, my whole life. And I lived in DC for 10 years. And I moved out here to New Mexico as a big shift and change after a few years that were challenging. And I just saw this like magnificent blossoming all year of being in a new place and making new friends and, living in nature and just having this radical change of pace with my life. And I would have to say that I imagined things to look quite different. Obviously, I didn't imagine a pandemic happening, which has, for me, at least with community and making new friends, has been really challenging. Um,
Yeah, that was a big part of
so
your intention was to form
yeah,
connections and a new tribe in
yes,
Mexico.
totally. So I think when in some moments I'm like, man, I didn't blossom at all. But I also have to say, in the week or two since we last touched base about this, I have realized there have been a lot of shifts that are just that slow, unfolding kind that you don't always see. And actually, I think when you look at a flower blossoming, you don't watch it like break open in one moment.
Mm.
It just slowly happens. And that I actually feel is what this year has been, because my outer environment changed so a lot of things did change in my life, and my daily rituals are different, and I have had so much more alone time. And while I haven't made as many new connections as I'd want, some of the few new connections I have made have been really rich
Mm.
and beautiful, and my world has gotten smaller in challenging ways, but also in ways where I find I'm like really nurturing what is already there or what really exists. So I think I'm coming to see it from a new lens.
Mm.
But my initial like imagination of being this like big flower open in the world, showing off all my true colors and living in this totally new way with new people is definitely not what I experienced this year.
Yeah, and the fact that you had to go, I guess, deep with a fewer number of relationships is something I think a lot of people could relate to as a probably a positive byproduct of the pandemic, as well as the quality
Yeah,
of those individual relationships was
yeah.
enhanced, and maybe those broader connections were limited because of the lockdown and the limitation. But that seems to be a positive.
That's true, totally. And I think because of the pandemic too, just not taking for granted having someone to be like, "Oh my god, today's been really hard," and that
Yeah.
I can still reach out to whether they live here or they're not here at all. That it doesn't matter quite as much anymore, and that has been a beautiful piece of the friendships that are everywhere also feel really close.
Yeah. It just occurred to me while you were sharing that then as well, that this year I feel like has disrupted um, an entitlement almost that I've felt in previous years to think big and optimistically at the start of a year. It's almost like a luxury that we've had to go, anything is possible. And
Yes.
that kind of, yeah, wild optimism that I've practiced with my goal setting at the start of the year just hasn't been possible this year. And really interesting that you've still found positive through that as well. But yeah, I wonder if that will change. It's definitely changed the way that I'm looking at the year ahead, and I wonder if that's a long term thing as well of living with increased uncertainty.
Mm,
Mm.
yes, and ideally, hopefully, I think learning to honor ourselves just as much, right? Because I think that's the challenge, right? You don't meet your own expectations, and then it's easy to berate yourself
Yep.
versus being like, I still want to dream big, but I just really want to meet myself wherever I am always. And the same for everyone in my life. And totally celebrate backwards progress, forwards progress, like wherever we're at this point.
Yeah.
Because really our survival has become much more of, the fundamental fabric of what we're looking for.
Yeah. So while we're on your 2020 year, that intention, that was your intention. What was the reality? If you could sum that up in a word or a couple of words to sum up 2020, a theme or a vibe for you of the reality.
The word that's coming to me, which I don't know if it's trite, but is evolution.
Mm.
And in some ways, like I do feel like I moved out. I made a big outward move, but I also feel like I went really inward, almost into a cocoon too, at the same time. And then there was this, like, through that inwardness and cocooning almost, a slow being with change
Hmm.
within myself and our world. Moments of fast change, but also moments of that like slower shift that I can tell is taking place, of like reorientation and reprioritization and letting other things become more important than maybe they had been in the past, and vice versa, letting other things die down in their importance, where I can now stand at the end of this year and say, oh, wow, my creativity is a lot more important to me than it
Mm.
ever was before.
Mm.
Walking twice a day is like, I can't live without that. um, it's my vitamins. Seeing the
Mm.
sunset is part of my vitamins. Being like the most successful entrepreneur, coach, blah, blah, blah. That's important.
Yeah. Wow. Funny
It's
that.
not like the be all end all of my life by any means. So yeah, I would say, and that doesn't happen like again overnight. I think it's that slower pace of like
Mm.
all of a sudden over a long period of time you recognize things have just reordered themselves
Mm.
that
That's
way.
so fascinating because when you compare the word blossom and evolution, they have similar qualities, in my
Yeah.
perception at least. When I think of the word blossom, I see something that's quite external and visible.
Yes.
And when I think of evolution, I do think of that kind of like slow unfolding. Similar result, maybe not as quick, but
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
already I can just see that some of the,
Normal.
the themes that are coming from what you're sharing around um, the squashing of our ego and our ambition this year. That's definitely been a
Mhm.
thing that I've experienced, and just my relationship with ambition has
Mm,
changed, I think,
mm,
as a result of this year.
mm,
I'm not so concerned with striving and trying as much anymore
mm.
as well.
Yeah, totally. And you have many reasons for that, I think.
Oh,
So
yeah.
yeah, how about for you in terms of your word that you chose for last year and where you're feeling in relationship with that at this moment in time?
It still makes me laugh. I think we talked about this on our last call as well. But one of the intentions I set for myself this year that came about from some of my experiences from last year was to look at difficult moments and ask the question, what if this was easy right now? So
Mm,
I realized that probably in my reaction to situations, I was amplifying the discomfort of them by reacting.
mm,
And so I wanted to bring more ease into my everyday life. So that was my intention for 2020. That word ease, and
mm.
trying to find more ease moment to moment. I completely failed.
That is a challenging one to pick for 2020.
Oh boy, I'm just going to add it straight to my list again this year. But as I said to you offline before we started this conversation, I've gone through my journal from this year over Christmas, and I'm still on holiday, so I start work next Monday. And I've been using this time just to kind of like catch a breath and reflect, because I think more than any other year, I have just been on the treadmill, reacting to all the external circumstances, which is not a space I've been wanting to be or comfortable in over the last few years. I've always wanted to have a kind of sense of control and feel like I have agency over my situation, and be able to, respond with integrity to things when they come up.
Yeah.
And I've really struggled with that during like 2020 as well. So what I found in going back through my journal is actually self compassion has been
Mm,
really what I've needed this year, which I haven't had a lot of.
mm,
And so reading my journal, it's kind of like hearing a friend tell me about their experiences and be able to have a bit of critical distance and just go, you know what, mate, that sounds really full on. Like it sounds like you've done your best under the circumstances, and just
oh,
that kind of gentleness is has been lacking, I think, for me, in the
mm.
intensity of this year. So that kind of leads to, like, my intention was ease, and the word that I would use to sum up 2020 is intense.
Mm.
Surely I'm not alone. I'm sure there are other people who
Yeah,
have that as
I'm
their
so
word to sum up
sure.
2020 as
And
well. And
something you said to me last time we connected, which really stuck with me and I thought was very profound, was that some intentions are a multi-year process.
yeah,
And some intentions you set them and you aren't in the first year going to make all the headway that you think. And I could totally see something like ease ironically being like, well, first we're going to bring all the intensity and almost like really stretch to the place almost maybe of surrender or vision in a new way where all of a sudden it's you're taken to a deeper level of understanding as you keep moving towards it.
yeah, absolutely. And I've learned at least that suffering is a really great teacher. And so attracting these sort of situations, and I don't know when has to come a tipping point where you're not willing to tolerate these sorts of experiences any longer. But I'm definitely there with some of the experiences I've had in 2020 where I need to change the way that I'm responding to external
Mm,
circumstances. And I think with any change, the first step is the awareness, and then
yeah.
it's actually the changing of the behavior.
Yes.
But one of the
So
things that I can share probably a couple of the personal things that have popped up over 2020. But what's interesting for me as well, and I don't know if this has been the case for you this year, Ali, is that the intensity of experiences, they haven't all been bad. So it's actually just like how much I could handle on my plate in one year has been too much, really.
yeah.
So, and that comes back to the ambition and the, I guess the entitlement for optimism that I felt at the start of 2020, that I guess a lot of us living in, developed countries and wealthy countries with privilege that we've taken for
Privilege.
granted
Yeah.
and freedoms that
Yes.
we've taken for granted. So my wife and I were expecting our first child in April this year, and we were very lucky to welcome Harriet, our daughter, into the world on the 27th of April. And we had the ambitious goal to also start building our first family home in starting in June this year, and have the first stage of that finished by September this year. And that didn't happen. Um, and also around March this year, for many people, this is the case as well. But my work was threatened, and my way of working, I thought, was going to be completely redundant, because I was running face-to-face workshops, and that had been my bread and butter for the last couple of years. And so there was a really stressful period between, like, in a couple of weeks in March, where my wife went on maternity leave. We were going down to a single income, and all of my work got cancelled. And um,
You're about to have a new beautiful family member in your
yeah,
life.
exactly. So I think what I've learned at least was that having a baby, building a house, completely shifting my business to online, and living through a global pandemic was probably a bit much to manage
That's fair.
in a year as well. But having said that, like, having a baby has just been the most wonderful thing, and so much joy. And our daughter is weird and awesome and blowing our minds every day. And it's just been such a beautiful experience. So, so much good stuff as well, but just the intensity of experiencing that. And I felt myself going through a classic, transition into a new phase and chapter of my life as a father, which is,
Mm,
we've talked about rites of passage in the past as well, and I'm in a liminal. I still feel like I'm in a liminal space where my old ways of doing things are no longer relevant, and the new ways of doing things are not yet apparent. So I'm
mm,
in transition, and that discomfort of who am I now is constant.
yeah. And I imagine, my gosh, I mean, you're for sure the role that you're taking on as becoming a parent is bringing that forward, and I think it's mirroring the world in so many ways, and so many people might also, I myself do, relate with that sense of things that were aren't underneath of us as ground anymore, and what we're walking towards is also incredibly foggy and
Mhm.
unclear. So we're just aware of that liminal space and where we exist currently being what it is, but not a forever that we can predict or plan. So I'm curious if you've noticed any in yourself or your relationship with yourself in navigating such intensity this year. Um, what has changed for you, or what have you found kind of evolving maybe over the course of this year by
Uh,
stepping to that liminal space?
Yeah.
because
Well, I
you're
mean,
also doing it well, from all I can observe.
yeah. Mm.
That you're doing an amazing job.
Yeah, thank you. I haven't felt like I've done 2020 well, but coming back to that self-compassion, I've been creating more space for myself just to practice that sort of kind friend-like compassion to myself,
Yeah.
just to say, mate, you've done really well under the circumstances, and yeah, anyone else would have done the same under those circumstances. There's obviously like all the cosmetic things that have changed in my life, but in terms of, this is really good because I haven't figured this out, so I'm just gonna like you know brain vomit whatever comes up for me. But I think that letting go of ambition,
Mm,
definitely, and just thinking of how I've evolved over even like the last 10 years, and the roles that I've played, and how I've seen myself in society and in my career as well. I have a lot less need for um, being publicly recognized, or being the person on a stage, having my achievements validated. Um, my world seems a lot smaller. These are all obvious things to new parents, I'm sure, but what matters to me has become a lot smaller. And really, the happiest that I've been in the last couple of months has been with my wife, Hannah, and Harriet, when it's the three of us on the floor in this rental that we
mm,
was our in between. That we thought we'd be here for a few months before building our house that we've almost been here for 2 years. But those kind of times where it's just the three of us playing um, aimlessly, yeah, it's just never felt better. So
mm,
that's also been a shift for me, as I used to get my energy from recharging, and I had an abundance of spare time, and it seems now, to practice self-care, and that's something I've really struggled with. I don't have hours every day to meditate, to surf, to run, to go for a float every week or two. I had really a luxury of time for self care that I don't have anymore. But what I've been finding is family time for me has been
mm.
um, my new, yeah, energizer,
I know.
and yeah, finding a place for that as well.
Mm,
Um, and probably
beautiful.
the other thing that I have been reflecting on it in terms of what's changed for me is, if I'm thinking about looking forward to 2021, and how I have been in the past has been really goal oriented and trying to have a sense of control at the start of the year, which I think is important, and was important to me at a time in my life when I'm trying to change the trajectory intentionally of my life. That I was really focused on the doing and having of goals. So I want to have this much
Mm,
money, or I want to have this possession, and then evolving to maybe I want to experience this, or have this memory, or this achievement. My way of like planning now is more about who do I want to be in the year ahead, and
mm,
if I can focus on
mm.
the person that I want to be, how I want to show up moment to moment. That's really what's changing for me, is becoming a better person situationally,
Mm,
and then responding, through my values and through my purpose, um, organically to situations, and holding the future a lot more lightly,
mm,
I think, as
mm.
well.
If there's any one lesson we could all learn, it's that.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I mean, that's
Honestly.
really something I'd like to carry into this year, is um, putting my energy into the here and now. What's the immediate problem or project that requires my attention here and now? Having a light attention and view of where that will take me in the future, and where the end goal is, but really like forgetting about that until I'm on to the next problem or project, or
Mhm.
situation as well, because there's been
Yeah,
so much uncertainty. It's just impossible.
totally. And I think I think about the concept of vision, or I stopped using the word goals a while ago.
Yeah, I think we both
I
did. kind of land on
Yeah.
that at the same time?
I
Or
think partly because of the being and how you can show up being the fundamental piece of what shifts you towards what you're wanting to experience.
yeah, yeah,
And I do really believe in the power of our imaginations to paint like the pictures and even use our intuition to kind of source what we feel called towards and want to create before it's physically in the world. And I think what you just articulated is something I've been thinking about a lot is like, what's the dance between that
mm,
image
mm,
and the now?
mm-hmm,
And how do we like kind of learn the pathway between the two?
mm-hmm,
Because we do need to go somewhere to inspire ourselves at times to change or create new things. And we have to operate in the present. And what that thing looks like will always be informed and changed by the present moment. So it has to be evolving constantly in
yeah.
order for us to be adapting and living in the world the way that it is right now.
I love the way you've articulated that. I agree completely. And it's just brought home to me the fact that we, this year more than ever, we only have the present. We,
Yeah.
we really only have this moment. And the role of planning and goal setting and visioning is to help enrich the present.
Yes.
It's a vehicle to get us more engaged and more intentional and more on purpose in the here and now as well. And yeah, I don't know if you felt this as well, because moving to New Mexico for you, I think has been on that sort of future vision trajectory for a couple of years.
Yeah.
And so for me as well, like in my life with Hannah and having a baby and starting a family and buying this block of land in nature and building our dream home, that was on a vision board for me 10 years ago as well. And I've felt quite a void actually in arriving at this
Mhm.
place, and I think that's been part of the danger as well of that being too fixed on the end goal
Yeah.
is, you know, there's now a kind of void about like, what do I do next? And
Yeah.
now that I'm here, all my dreams haven't come true, and it's not perfect and doesn't feel easy. um, and so reshifting that is like, it's the vision is always needs to be there as a kind of motivator and inspiration, um,
Yes.
but also holding that lightly and sort of keeping it as the kind of the fire that continues to inspire in the here and now as
Yes.
well.
Totally. And I love that you said it's enriching our present because it gives us hope and optimism to move forward. But it
Yeah,
has to be able to receive new information and new, and
and
new
evolve.
data that's coming up all the time in the emergent present. So, and I think that's where we get set up for inflexibility and inability to actually embrace change if we're so fixed on this version of our imaginative future
Hmm.
and all the things we project it's going to feel like, and we start experiencing something so different from that, and it invalidates that which it doesn't need to, it doesn't have to. But it we if we can let in new information and adjust and like move with changes, we can keep things alive and keep feeding them with what we're seeing change.
Yeah, I want to ask you about what's changed for you in the last year. But just before I do, I want to like riff on an idea that's just been coming to me from this conversation about um, goal setting and visioning. If I kind of carry on that thread of focusing more on who we want to be in the future, who I want to be, and less of doing and having, I
Yeah.
wonder if probably what I could focus on in the year ahead is who do I want to be 10, 15 years from now? So how do I show up in circumstances, and visualizing myself as a particular person
Mm.
who can respond to a whole range of unexpected circumstances in a way that I'm proud of, and that feels
Mm.
aligned with who I want to be as well.
Yeah.
Maybe
To-
that's where I can put my energy, not on the having and the doing so much, but the person that responds to the having and the doing.
yeah. 100%. And that really is resonating. It's reminding me of an exercise I actually did a while ago, but it's come up for me this year. I read about it in a book by Tara Moore called Playing Big, and she has you visualize your inner mentor and like go visit this person and sit with them and be with them and have conversations with them. And then once you've brought that image of that being to life, which is, I think, you know, I relate with that as who I want to be in my future life, then you can like have conversations with this mentor throughout your day and like in everyday situations and try to think, oh, what would this person, you know,
Future
what would
Allie.
they do? Yeah, yeah, yeah. I'm trying to recall the name of mine. I think it was like Bella or something like that. Like, what Bella do right now?
do,
And
do you want to like
helpful.
do you want to take a risk and just like have a play with this right now and see
Sure.
where it goes? So
Yeah.
let's like situate yourself 10 years in the future from now, future Allie, and this is, yeah, like what you've described as your future mentor,
Mm-hmm.
the person that you want to be, and the person that shows up in situations and attracts things that you're proud of and desire.
Mm-hmm.
So who is it? Can you describe that person to me? Who do you aspire to be 10 years from now, and what quality
Yeah.
does that
You
person
know,
have?
I actually project out, I think, a little bit further when
Yeah,
I do
yeah, yeah.
this. So I'm trying to bring it back to 10 years, but I might mix it with
That's fine. Yeah, whatever. Just
someone who's like in her 70s and
beautiful.
she has a great garden. She takes care of her plants phenomenally, which is definitely an aspiration of mine that I have. But she is just really like self-assured within herself, grounded, and has a really strong trust in life and in herself.
Mm,
And I always found that sense of trust in both herself and in life, which for me, has been tested a lot over the last few years, especially. I found myself more than I ever have before doubting the unfolding of life, which
mm,
I used to, I think, have a much stronger trust in. And so that is a really aspirational piece to me of just trusting the life and
mm,
what emerges and what unfolds, even if it's painful and full of grief and change. Um, really knowing how to be with that. So there's a really strong presence in there. Uh, she also is very honest and says what's real without much fuss about it.
mm,
And that's a huge aspiration of
mm,
mine
mm,
to really be able to just say what feels true and be honest without the constant worrying of, well, how's this person going to feel about it, or what does this mean, or I personally do a lot of self doubt with my
mm,
voice,
mm,
and so her just fluidity with what emerges through her and what she speaks is really just in flow
mm,
and isn't a thing the way I make it out to be.
mm,
And I think she's very creative in the way that is like intuitive to her, um, makes sense to her. She might have a different flow for her days than the average person, but she just does it and she just lives in that way of life that comes really naturally to her. And I think she's also welcomes a lot of people into her home and creates space for people and does things, is a part of her community and is out and about and shares and expresses her work in really powerful ways. Um, and that relationship with herself, that's very ever present. She's clearly feeding it a lot, and she's come to this real sense of trust is totally what I aspire to.
Oh, I love that. So beautiful. I can't wait to
Mm,
be at that age and hanging out with you.
Yes. Oh,
I can see the whole
geez.
picture, and yeah, really beautiful exercise because, you know, who that person is has um, things and experiences that scaffold that identity. You know what I mean? Like that there is a kind of
Yeah.
playground for that being that must exist, but secondary to the who you are
Yeah,
as well.
totally. There's a lot of things that become possible in that state of being. Yeah.
Exactly, and but many ways to manifest a life that supports that identity as
Yeah.
well. So,
Yeah. So true.
and it's possible. I can see that identity. It's possible for that identity to withstand a pandemic,
Mm,
climate change disaster,
yeah.
a disruptive political system,
Mhm.
whatever things we can't even
Change.
imagine yet. But
Yeah.
you know, a sense of the uncertainty that we've been living with this year
Yeah.
as well, with grace and calm and patience.
Mm,
Love it.
mm.
I might borrow a few of her qualities as well.
Yes, totally. Would you like to do a little envisioning too?
I'll try. Yeah, it's yeah. Where will I go? I'll just kind of shoot into what I'm embracing at the moment is that I'm in the early stages of becoming a middle-aged man,
Hmm.
and being okay with that. I turned 40 this year as well, which you know is just a number, and in many ways I feel younger than I was in my outlook on life than I was in my early 20s.
Mm,
But there are also just like normal things that I'm experiencing with my energy and um, appearance and things that are like the natural signs of evolving and um, accepting of that. So yeah, if I cast my mind into the future, I want to be. Oh, I see a man that is patient.
mm,
Similar to you, it's this kind of peaceful assuredness with who I am and the ability to speak my truth um, lightly. I think
mm,
without too much story and without too much attachment and without judgment, but just have the ability to express what I'm feeling and what matters to me without
mm,
um, yeah, a long story as well. Um, yeah, I feel like it's really just an acceptance, like coming to a place where I accept myself fully, and I don't need anything from others, but um, yeah, I'm satisfied and content with my life and the simplicity of it, and um, yeah, a lot of I see a lot of like calm, a lot of quiet time, a lot of recreation, and that my work is a vehicle to doing that, and that I'm able to bring that calm to all of my relationships
mm,
and be a beacon, I guess, of calm and stability in the lives of other people as well. And I've seen my house and the home that the family home that we build as a place of as a
mm,
sanctuary for the people that we love and for those that need calm and rest as well. I think that still matters to me and whatever form it takes. Maybe it's not this house. As you know, like our build has been a bit of a disaster this year, and what we thought would take place hasn't taken place, and so that's been really good as well, just to let go of the cosmetic outcome of that and actually believe that you know, we can create that life in the here and now. It doesn't have to be a house to do that as well.
mm.
But yeah, I want to be a man that can be a mentor, that can be a a source of wisdom as well. I had a really beautiful conversation with one of our neighbors, future neighbors in the place that we have a block of land, who was sort of coaching me a little bit a couple of weeks ago on the tumultuous ride we've been on with building our house and having patience. And he just kind of said, you know, you see these elders, or he was talking about older men that we might look to as having a kind of sense of calm and
Mm.
patience and wisdom. And he says this isn't. He was saying that this isn't the kind of wisdom that comes from reading books or watching YouTube videos or um, you know uh, like hypothetically living life. This is earned wisdom that has come through navigating challenges and finding resilience and strength. And him and his wife, they've been going through a few challenges as well. And he said, "We are right now the uh, old wise men in making. You know, we are earning the wisdom that we will have through experience." And I really love that as well.
Mm.
And
Beautiful.
yeah, this year I've actually found a lot of stability and groundedness in my faith, and I think that's something that
Mm.
we've talked about more this year than ever in conversations. And really, simply for me, it's having a kind of anchor of spirituality this year um, to just
Yeah.
bring me back to what matters to me at a deeper level has been incredibly grounding. And really, I think this is evident in all of the spiritual traditions about the importance of being here in the present and surrendering the future to your God or the universe or whatever you believe in as well. But the leader of the church that I'm a part of has given really good advice for the year ahead about um, really taking care of what you can that's within your control, and then surrendering to God. You can replace that with whatever you believe in, the rest. So that's kind of really been my the thing that I've been thinking about now is there's an ability that we have maybe to control some of the external circumstances. And so I hope in the year ahead that I can have the wisdom to
Mm.
at least mitigate the things that are outside of me so that they don't impact me and my family too negatively. And there's a certain ability that all of us have to do that. But in the case of the pandemic, not much. So where I can't be in control of those external circumstances, that um, I want to use them as stepping stones to wisdom and calm and patience, in the
Yeah.
future as well.
Yeah, totally. That makes so much sense. And I love thinking about you as an elder in training. Thank God.
Yeah.
So deeply needed.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And that again just kind of brings us back to that thing about using the future to enrich the present. If I can
Mhm.
have a story, it's the Viktor Frankl thing about finding meaning in your present suffering, and
Yes.
that can kind of completely change your experience of the present. So if
Yeah.
I can see
Yep.
my painful experiences now as essential to my role as a wise elder in the
Yeah,
future,
totally.
then it totally changes the story, doesn't it, of the present.
Yes. And something else as you were just saying, talking about knowing what's within control and what isn't, that came to me that I want to work with more personally too in this coming year. I've done a lot of these trainings in emotional intelligence, and one of the um, kind of founding or a very formative mantra that gets repeated in that particular training that I was training in and being mentored in was that they actually asked us to release the word control and adopt the word influence and
Mm,
notice if there's anything that shifts. Well, I add this piece because I notice something shifts in my body when I stop trying to control something and I start recognizing, what do I have influence over?
mhm,
And where's my influence? And how do I use my influence? But not try to control. Because to
mm,
me, control has an attachment to an outcome,
mhm,
and influence has it's rooting more in agency and like that sense of, well, rather than trying to control the whole picture and control everything, how do I just come back to my sphere of influence
Oh, I love
and
it.
start identifying what's possible? And
Yeah.
that's beyond COVID, I think, too, in the US, especially what we're reckoning with in our systemic racism and oppression and the history that needs to be rewritten. And I think what a lot of folks are waking up to are already very awake to, and the need of dramatic change. It's similar, right? Because sometimes you just want to be like, oh my God, how can I change this enormous problematic system? And really reclaiming, and I think this was a big important piece of the uprisings in our country, and just honoring like you do have influence, you
Mm-hmm.
can't change it all,
Mm-hmm.
and there's influence. So to reclaim that within ourselves and just start identifying even little points of influence being empowering. And yeah, I find that to be really helpful. And I'm reminding myself, yeah, that's the lens I want to have when I walk into this year ahead.
I love it. I love it so much. And I mean, this has been such a lesson from 2020 is this year, if we didn't already get it, it has painted this so clearly to us that we have no control. It's an illusion.
Yeah.
I'm screaming this at myself as well because it's been my greatest challenge this year and over the last few years is this illusion of control. We never had it. We now more than ever know that. And my journey this year has been that kind of uh, I guess spiraling of the ego as well is like the ego says I have control, and then when an external disruption comes along that shows that there is no control, then suddenly the ego feels like a victim and feels powerless. And I felt in my experiences of this year, like I've spiraled from that sense of, ego control, optimism. I'm going to do all these things and achieve all these things, having that sort of control wrestled away, and then feeling like a victim and not having a voice as well. And I really love that change of language because it really is about influence and surrender, right?
Yeah.
I have a
Yes.
certain amount of
Yes.
agency,
Yes.
but I can't control where that agency
Yes.
goes as well. And
Mhm.
yeah, that's something I've found in the last couple of months is having more of a voice, speaking my truth, knowing that particularly in our build, so our house build process, Hannah and I were very throughout the process very passive and tolerant of things that we shouldn't have tolerated, and really needed to exercise our agency a lot more. So that's something I've been experimenting with, and I've probably dialed it up too far now in some conversations that I've had. But I want to I think
Yeah.
both of us touched on this in our vision for who we want to become, is speaking our truth lightly and without judgment and without a story attached to it, and surrendering to where that goes, but knowing that we can influence
Yeah.
things in that dance with reality in the world.
Yes. Totally. So beautifully put. Mm,
Oh wow, this has been a great conversation,
right.
Ellie. I didn't expect
Yeah.
to find so much gold, and yeah, it always, even after this many years, it just amazes me that we still get so much out of
Yeah.
putting our experiences together as well. Feels
Yes.
like probably a kind of natural time to sort of tie the conversation
Yeah.
down to a finishing point. Was there anything you wanted to kind of share about your experiences of 2020? I think I've probably spoken in a bit more concrete detail about stuff, but are there any sort of moments that stand out for you that you want to recognize as having had a big influence on your year or your outlook on the year ahead?
It's a wonderful question. I think that this year has just been such a roller coaster in so many ways, so many true highs. Like, I really do look back on this year and see moments that were unbelievable. And I road tripped out here with a really close friend, which was a beautiful trip. And arriving here, I was like elated to finally come here after so many years of wanting to be here. And then a few weeks later, rocketed like back to earth with the pandemic, and very similar to you, just total fear of losing all my work and not knowing how to pay my rent. And I needed to rent a new place. And how do you rent a new place when the pandemic is happening and you can't prove income, which is already hard for a self-employed person? So I feel like I had these intense highs and then lows kind of back to back sometimes. And I would say that honestly, at the same time, in some ways, being here in New Mexico is such a gift, because you are so in relationship to the grandeur of nature and to the beauty of the earth. I mean, that's why I moved here. And I do get these reminders, and I take sunset walks most nights. And it to me is this reminder of like the earth turns every day. The sun rises and it sets. And we are so, in a beautiful, helpful way, we are so small in this grand experiment of being human beings on this planet. And who are we to think we know what is emerging and what needs to change? And I appreciate the reminders I get a lot about, just change being a natural part of life. And when I can step out of the like human construct of the way that everything is supposed to be and how awful this is because of X, Y, or Z, I also can step into what I sense is like this just massive wave of like a push to change that I think I and probably you and many, many other people on this earth have also felt coming, and knew that something was going to nudge us into dramatic change through our lives. So I really love those reminders when I can feel them and when I can like drop into that space of remembering that we're here to change, and that's beautiful. So just some of the natural beauty I've seen this year has totally blown my mind. I'm like, these colors exist, this scene exists. And that's what's kept me going through also the moments where I'm like, I literally don't know. I just don't know what's gonna unfold.
Did we talk about this last year? But my nephew coined a term. I don't know if you heard it from somewhere else, but I had this experience when I was dealing with the shock and grief of my best friend being diagnosed with cancer a couple of years ago, and everything felt so bad. And then on my way to the hospital in the morning, in a Melbourne crispy winter morning, I'd look out and see the sun breaking through the yellow leaves and feel the wind on my skin and just be like, holy shit, this is so beautiful. Like, I can't believe. And so he coined this term collateral beauty, which I think is a really
gorgeous term.
Really nice way of describing what you've kind of described a little bit there as well. Is just coming back to the beauty that is always here, always present. And I love the way you just kind of, reframed change as being something that is actually essential to our human experience. It's not a disruption. It's, the illusion that we haven't been changing is just that, it's an illusion. And actually welcoming it and aligning who we are in our nature with that change.
Yes, totally. And it just kind of begins with the flip of perspective in some ways too, of just honoring and welcoming versus resisting, and letting out that natural part of us that knows how to do this to be with this process too.
Totally. Can I put you on the spot? And it doesn't matter if you don't come up with one word here, but an intention for 2021 so that we can laugh at ourselves next year. No, perhaps what we've learned from the illusion of control is an even lighter way of viewing the year ahead. But is there a word or a phrase or a feeling that comes to mind for how you want to live in this year ahead?
Yeah, I think, in some ways, I I guess in addition to the word cocoon, I feel like I felt like this past year was a lot of growing roots into the soil within myself,
Hmm.
actually, not necessarily so rooted in place, but I think a little more rooted in self. And I feel like that gives me a place to stretch and expand from. And I I was thinking, oh, this year I want to start like building more of a foundation. I've moved. I'm exploring my life in this place here. And because of the tumult of the year, I also just feel like I don't I just don't want to think about building in a sense that it couldn't change or
Mm,
that it couldn't
mm,
be subject to more change
mm,
um, to come. So instead, I am thinking about, well, how am I already anchored? Because I do think I grew some roots and anchors. And what can I expand? How can I stretch out from that place
mm.
and grow and build maybe and start to set things up for myself in a way that feel really supportive and encouraging of more creation, more exploration, more learning, more growth, but that isn't tied to like this solid structure that can't move or change. I think
Mm,
um, I've been on such a journey with home, as you know,
mm,
and um, I'm about to move into a new physical structure out here, which I'm very excited about. And I also know I for sure know it's not like this is the place I'm going to be for a long time. It's definitely a stepping stone,
mm,
which I'm sure is part of this, where I'm like, well, I'm not rooting into this physical structure. I can tell because I sense I'll grow from it for sure.
mm.
But what can I be building? What can I experience and stretch and build from? Like there is real foundation within me that allows this to be a really supportive container and know that the support is there, that I can do some of that, you know, reaching beyond what I think when we feel like things are really risky and we don't know what our foundation is, it's hard to expand ourselves beyond a comfort zone at times. And I found myself not always feeling that supported to take real risks this past year, creatively or with my
Mhm,
work.
mhm.
And uh, I really want to invite myself to start acknowledging what exists as a base that I do have the ability to take some risks from and expand out from.
Yeah, well, the word evolution still seems relevant from what you've just shared, and it seems to me as well that your foundation and your anchor is your ability to cope with change and evolve and
Yeah.
be and adaptable. I think adaptable is probably a word that kind of came up for me when you were sharing there. It's
Yeah.
like building, but being adaptive to change
Yeah.
and yeah, evolving in a way that is growth with uh,
Yes.
welcoming disruption and changing circumstances as well.
Yeah. Yes. Totally. And some healing. I sense this year has healing for me in
Oh
deeper
yeah,
ways than
yeah.
I've been
Oh,
able to.
we all, I mean, so much for the whole world. I think I'm going back to work on Monday. I've had friends that went back to work last Monday, and it's almost like a shock that anybody's going back to work yet. I feel like
Yeah.
I don't know subconsciously that I thought the whole world had agreed that we need 6 months off or something, take a sabbatical.
Yes.
But unfortunately, life goes on, and it hasn't worked out that way. But healing, not only on the sort of devastating impact of COVID and more so in your country, but
Yeah.
the cultures of division as well this year politically. The kind of the harm and hurt to particular
Yes.
segments of society that you know have been painful to watch and no doubt to experience as well. So I think
Yeah.
I hope that there's space for us all to heal as well in
Yes,
the year ahead.
totally.
Yeah.
I might elevate that to my deepest intention
Yeah.
for myself and for our collective. 100%.
Yeah.
How about for you?
Yes, I've come up with two words actually, just from this conversation. This has been really valuable for me. One of the things I've spoken to you about this year is just the shock of the scarcity of time that I've felt, and the luxury that I've had to practice self-care and have lots of space for reflection. And so these chats have been even more valuable for me, and this one particular, just to kind of make some sense of the roller coaster.
Mhm.
So the one word that the first word is wisdom, and now just starting to live, I guess, intentionally each day who I want to become as a wise elder eventually. In this kind of second phase of my life, I suppose. So applying applying wisdom in my day to day interactions, and really seeing what is a sort of balanced and calm way to approach this, and moderate in a way, and tempering the kind of emotional reaction to situations.
Mm.
And just to make sure that doesn't sound too boring, because this is also what I've realized in the last couple of months. I haven't had a lot of fun
Ah,
in
yes,
2020. You know what I mean?
yes,
I haven't done
joy.
haven't done much silly, playful stuff that hasn't had a important outcome or consequence as well. So wisdom and play are the two intentions that I have for 2021, and I really need to work on that, because I have a force that's in the back of me that's telling me I'm a responsible adult now, and I'm the primary breadwinner for my family at the moment, and I've got to do all these grown-up things, and it's not leaving a lot of space for play
Mm.
and fun and lightness, which is really like money in the bank, metaphorically, for my energy to
Yeah,
navigate all the weirdness of the year.
renewable resource.
Yeah, so wisdom and play for
Oh, I
2021.
love that. Actually, can I add
Yeah.
one word?
Yeah.
Because yeah, that was like for sure me processing some things as I was sharing before, but I realized I think part of my healing process that I've come to recognize is I want to feel worthy within myself of the things that I dream of, that I want to create, that I want to put into the world, of having good things coming into my life. And just that type of rooted whole self worthiness that really you can build from. I think to me, that is probably what the roots are, is when you feel truly
Mm,
worthy.
mm,
Um, Not in the sense of needing a lot of like, I mean, I believe we need feedback and reflection from each other. That's important in the world to feel connected. I need that for sure. But not to like fill a void. And I
mhm.
want to really feel like I'm tending to all those parts of myself where it just feels like really worthy and rooted in, um, like rooted in that sense of um, yeah, myself and beauty. And um, I think that's what I'm hoping to create through my experiences, and that I think will make possible what I'm looking for in partnership and
Mhm,
home
mhm.
and creativity and in my work and trying new things, um, showing up
Beautiful.
in that way.
Yeah. It just occurred to me that in many ways we've been seeking the same thing in the last couple of years, which is to feel at home in ourselves.
Yes.
And whether that's, for me, building a house to facilitate that feeling of being at home with myself and my family, and for you, whether that's been, moving to New Mexico and finding a place to live and personalize and nest and anchor down as well. That's been a path to facilitate this feeling of feeling at home within ourselves and worthy of, what we want to attract as well. So yeah, here's to creating more home for ourselves in 2021 and having the house and the outside things as a bonus.
Yes.
Well,
amen to that.
all the best. We'll chat again in a couple of weeks. And for anyone who's been listening, we hope that there's been a bit of comfort in this conversation as well. We wish you space for healing and for hope in the year ahead, and for whatever you've gone through in 2020, that at least the energetic shift that happens at this time of year through the population viewing a calendar change as something new. We hope that it can bring some positive change for you, and at least if it's the external circumstances don't improve, that it's an internal change for the better as well.
Amen. Lots of well-being and health along the way.
Absolutely.